What if the everyday items in your grocery cart right now became illegal to stockpile by next year? Sound impossible? Think again. Recent legislative drafts, supply chain reports, and emergency planning documents are painting a very different picture of what's ahead. Ordinary household items, things you've bought without a second thought your entire life, are quietly being reclassified as strategic resources. And the window for legal, affordable preparation is closing faster than most people realize. In this video, I'm going to reveal 13 common items that are currently at risk of restriction, rationing, or complete scarcity. More importantly, you'll learn exactly why these items are being targeted and what you can do about it before it's too late. This isn't fear-mongering. This is about understanding real legislative changes and supply chain realities that are unfolding right now. Welcome to Essential Pantry, where we help you stay prepared and resilient in an increasingly uncertain world. If you find this information valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed about food security and preparedness. Make sure you watch until the end. The final items on this list might surprise you the most. Let's start by understanding what's really happening behind the scenes. We're facing what experts are calling a perfect storm. Climate-related disasters are disrupting production and transportation. Our aging infrastructure is creating distribution bottlenecks that didn't exist a decade ago. International supply chain instability from geopolitical tensions is making it harder to source materials and finished goods. And perhaps most concerning, government priorities are shifting in ways that redefine what constitutes an essential item versus what might be considered hoardable. Here's what most people don't realize. Documents like the National Defense Authorization Act and amendments to the Farm Bill are actively reclassifying everyday goods. There's an emerging legal framework being built right now for rationing and purchase restrictions during declared emergencies. And these aren't theoretical plans sitting in someone's desk drawer. Real stores are already quietly logging purchases and implementing limits. The difference between being a prepared citizen and a hoarder is increasingly being defined by official classifications rather than common sense. Traditional staples that our grandparents took for granted are now being viewed as lifelines in crisis scenarios. Salt, coffee, matches. These aren't just conveniences anymore. In emergency planning documents, they're survival essentials. Empty shelves and price spikes aren't isolated incidents. They're early warning signs of a system under stress. And here's the dangerous part. There's always a lag between when supply chains start collapsing and when mainstream media covers it. By the time you see headlines, it's often already too late. Now let's talk about the 13 items you need to know about. First up is iodized table salt. You might be thinking, salt? Really? But here's what you need to understand. Salt isn't just for seasoning. It's a vital source of dietary iodine, especially critical in emergencies involving radiation exposure. Recent drafts of the National Defense Authorization Act and Department of Homeland Security memos now classify iodized salt as strategically essential. This gives government agencies the legal groundwork to restrict civilian stockpiling during declared crises. The threats to salt availability are mounting. Domestic iodine output is declining due to plant closures. There's already legislative groundwork being laid for classifying bulk salt purchases as suspicious activity. We're seeing growing reports of bulk purchase alerts at retailers and shelf shortages in certain regions. What can you do? Buy plain iodized table salt, not sea salt or kosher salt, in small to medium quantities. Prices remain low right now, but that window is narrowing fast. Next is powdered milk. Once considered a relic from your grandmother's pantry, powdered milk is now at the center of emergency food discussions. Why? It provides protein, calcium, and calories, and it has an incredibly long shelf life. It's both shelf-stable and multi-purpose, serving everything from home cooking to critical government relief programs. But there's a steep drop in U.S. dairy production happening right now, compounded by feed shortages and extreme weather events. Legislative proposals are already in the works for rationing bulk consumer purchases during emergencies. Prices are spiking and shelves are clearing even in rural stores where stock used to be abundant. Stock a simple 24-can case now. Don't rely solely on dry beans if you lack reliable fuel or water-stable resources for cooking. Canned beans are up next. They're cheap, nutritious, shelf-stable, and here's the critical part. They require no cooking during a blackout. You can eat them straight from the can. Yet severe crop failures, rising steel can production costs, and FEMA's emergency food listings are painting a troubling picture for the future of bulk bean purchases. We're seeing crop destruction from climate events. There's shrinkflation happening, with cans getting noticeably smaller while prices stay the same or increase. And there's a real risk of government diversion, where canned beans get directed to emergency reserves rather than store shelves. Stock a simple 24-can case now. Don't rely solely on dry beans if you lack reliable fuel or water-stable resources for cooking. Bottled water, specifically 5-gallon jugs, is facing unexpected scrutiny. While single-use bottles are still easy to find, larger refillable containers are becoming targets for regulators aiming to curb what they call hoarding during state-declared droughts and infrastructure emergencies. Multiple states are implementing bulk purchase restrictions. Mandatory ID checks and justifications for need are becoming more common. FEMA plans actually outline treating large water containers as strategic resources that can be commandeered or restricted. Secure several reusable containers now, while refilling is still hassle-free and untracked. That green 1-pound propane bottle you use for camping, it's the core of grid-down cooking capability. However, environmental concerns are pushing new federal and state-level sales limits, with groundwork being laid for suspensions during declared emergencies. There's precedent being established for limiting civilian access to what officials are calling non-essential combustibles. Refinery supply disruptions are becoming more frequent. New fire safety codes and anti-hoarding regulations are being written as we speak. Purchase what you reasonably need for emergencies now, and make sure to check your local codes about storage limits to stay compliant. Baking soda might seem innocent, but its versatility has drawn attention. It can be used for water purification, medical treatment, cleaning, and food preparation. High-volume purchases can now trigger automated alerts in retail systems. New guidelines are listing bulk baking soda purchases as suspicious activity. Supply disruptions from mine closures are creating scarcity. We're seeing sudden price spikes and purchase tracking in major retail chains. Buy a few large bags for both culinary and non-culinary uses, and keep them dry for maximum shelf life. This is one of those items where a little goes a long way, but you want it available when you need it. White distilled vinegar is unassuming, affordable, and endlessly useful. It's heavily leveraged for food preservation, cleaning, and even emergency medical care. But supply bottlenecks, ethanol shortages, and new dual-use classifications spell trouble ahead. There are a limited number of production facilities producing distilled vinegar. Legislative interest in capping consumer access is growing. Quiet retailer purchase limits and price hikes are already appearing in some markets. Opt for sealed gallons with at least 5% acidity, and remember vinegar's value for both sanitation and food preservation. Raw honey in bulk quantities is next on the list. Raw, unprocessed honey is shelf-stable for literally centuries and has significant medical benefits, including wound care and antibacterial properties. In the wake of collapsing bee populations and surging recognition of honey as a strategic reserve item, its future accessibility is genuinely in question. We're facing crop failures, import issues, and supply chain delays. There's potential for honey to be reclassified as a medical food reserve item. Price surges are happening alongside an influx of counterfeit products made from corn syrup rather than actual honey. Buy from local producers or trusted online sources, preferably in glass jars or food-grade buckets. Avoid filtered, pasteurized blends that have lost many of honey's beneficial properties. Instant coffee might seem a luxury, but in tough times, comfort matters. Instant coffee is lightweight, surprisingly calorie-dense, and storage-friendly. After a global coffee crop collapse and supply chain slowdowns, we're seeing shortages and early rationing protocols emerging. Complete regional stockouts have already occurred in some areas. Steep price rises and restricted retail purchases are becoming more common. Coffee has made its first appearance on emergency food monitoring lists. Store a modest supply of reputable instant coffee brand jars. Remember, survival isn't just about calories and nutrition, it's also about morale, and coffee provides that psychological boost that can be crucial during extended emergencies. Butane canisters are prized for safe indoor use and ease of storage compared to other fuel sources. Yet a string of urban fires and legislative moves are redefining portable fuel as a controlled commodity. New limits on emergency combustible purchases are either in place or pending in multiple jurisdictions. Tracking systems and local permit requirements are being implemented. Import delays and refinery outages are creating supply constraints. Maintain enough canisters to get through a foreseeable blackout or emergency. Respect local limits and store them safely according to manufacturer guidelines. Dried lentils are affordable, packed with essential nutrients, and quick to cook compared to most dried beans. They're a staple in times of crisis across many cultures. But devastating flooding in major growing regions and soaring global demand are pushing this staple towards scarcity and potential legal restriction. Climate-related crop failures are reducing supply significantly. Retail size reductions and hidden rationing are already happening. You might not notice that the bag got smaller, but it has. Legislative groundwork for state state purchase limits during emergencies is being laid right now. Act while bulk sizes remain available and affordable, and make sure to rotate your stock to maintain freshness, as lentils do eventually lose nutritional value over many years. Olive oil, specifically in metal cans, is far more than a salad dressing ingredient. Metal canned olive oil is shelf-stable, multi-purpose, and increasingly elusive due to catastrophic harvests and quiet product dilution. Domestic production has been halved by environmental disasters in key growing regions. Manufacturers are quietly moving to blends that contain other oils mixed with olive oil. There's pending reclassification of olive oil as a strategic edible oil that could trigger restrictions. Prioritize extra virgin olive oil in sealed metal cans, not plastic bottles or glass, for lasting nutrition and preservation utility. Metal cans protect against light and oxidation better than any other packaging. Finally, we have Strike Anywhere matches.
Simple, reliable, and enduring, Strike Anywhere matches are the ultimate fallback for fire starting. They don't require a special striking surface like safety matches do. However, increased fire danger concerns and regulatory interest in phosphorus-based tools have made bulk buying subject to reporting and restriction. New fire safety guidelines on reporting hazardous accumulations are being drafted. Shrinking manufacturer output due to chemical supply constraints means less availability. Local and online purchase limits or ID checks are starting to appear. Pick up several waterproof tins of genuine Strike Anywhere matches, store them in cool, dry places, and avoid accumulating more than is plausible for reasonable home use. If you've noticed empty shelves, sudden price spikes, or quietly imposed purchase limits in your area, you are absolutely not alone. These changes are not isolated events. They're part of a broader trend toward tightening control of supply lines, both public and private. Agencies that once focused exclusively on foreign threats are now positioned to regulate civilian access to what used to be basic groceries and household goods. Being proactive means monitoring not just what's happening in your local stores, but understanding the legislative changes and supply chain realities that will determine what will or won't be available when disaster strikes. Today's over-the-counter basics are tomorrow's restricted goods or emergency rations. The pattern is clear if you know where to look. So how should you prepare? First, don't wait for headlines. By the time mainstream media sounds the alarm, stores may already be empty or sale limits firmly in place. You need to act before the crowd realizes there's a problem. Buy within reason. Build up your supply quietly, making small, regular purchases rather than large, conspicuous orders that might trigger alerts or make you look like you're panic buying. Check expiration dates and storage requirements carefully. Opt for supplies with genuinely long shelf life and proper packaging, metal tins for oil, waterproof containers for matches, and so on. Use and rotate your supplies. Integrate these staples into your normal diet or home routines to avoid waste and ensure you actually know how to use them when it matters. And diversify your sources. Don't rely on just one supplier, one product type, or one store. Shortages and limits may hit some retailers before others. Staying informed is equally critical. Track local trends by paying attention to what's happening on your own shelves in your own community. Regional shortages often precede national ones by weeks or even months. Watch for legislation at both state and federal levels. Look for new definitions of hoarding, strategic reserve, or dual-use household items in emergency bills and regulations. Network with others in your community. Sharing observations and practical tips with friends or trusted neighbors helps everyone stay one step ahead. What's really at stake here isn't just convenience, it's resilience and independence. When systems fracture under pressure, the difference between being labeled a hoarder and being recognized as a prepared citizen often comes down to nothing more than timing and intent. The historical lesson is clear. Those who see trends early are best positioned to support themselves and others. They're also the least likely to be caught in a wave of panic buying and desperation. These 13 items might not look like much sitting on a shelf today, but in the increasingly fragile reality we're heading into in 2026, they are genuine lifelines that separate self-reliance from emergency dependence. This is not about living in fear, it's about understanding facts and thinking ahead. The window for easy, legal preparation is still open right now, but it's closing fast. By understanding the forces shaping our food, fuel, and essentials landscape, you position your household to adapt and endure whatever comes next. Whether it's a waterproof tin of Strike Anywhere matches, a 5-pound bag of lentils, or a metal can of olive oil, what you buy today may very well define your options when the world gets unpredictable. Stay observant, act with clear intention, be part of the wave that quietly but confidently prepares prepares for an uncertain future rather than waiting for permission or validation from authorities who may have very different priorities than your family's well-being. If you found this information valuable, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Essential Pantry. We'll continue bringing you critical information about food security, preparedness, and resilience. Share this video with friends and family who need to hear this message. And let me know in the comments, have you noticed local shortages, price hikes, or new purchase limits in your area? Your insights could be the early warning that helps your neighbors, your community, and people watching these videos navigate the uncertain days ahead. Stay prepared, stay resilient, and I'll see you in the next video.